don't you put that fucking phone?
Hi. Tonight we're doing TikTok and YouTube, hopefully. And in a few days we hope to be doing Instagram and Facebook as well. I don't know anything about technology, but I have a very capable technician who does things for me. So I left school when I was 14 to become a farmer. My father and his father and his father and his father were all farmers. My other grandfather was a blacksmith, but his father and his father and his father were farmers. And both of my grandfathers had 11 brothers and sisters. And one grandmother had 6 brothers and sisters, and the other grandmother had 4 brothers and sisters. So there were hundreds of cousins. And the local school in Katanning, Western Australia, only went to year 10, so I left school when I was 14 to become a farmer. But 6 months later, on my 15th birthday, I decided I want to be a doctor instead, which seemed a bit crazy, as I'd never studied any chemistry or any biology, which were the first subjects in the medical course. I'd done physics, and the nearest medical school was 1,700 miles away. And to get into that medical school in Adelaide, you had to either have 2 foreign languages to year 10 or 1 foreign language to year 12. And I'd never done a word of a foreign language in my life. Didn't even realize that my father's father spoke German, and I was a quarter German and half English and 1/8 Scots and 1/8 probably Irish. Anyway, we battled through, and by the time I was 23, I was a hospital doctor in Royal Perth Hospital, which was pretty heavy going. We worked 5.5 days plus 2 nights a week and 2 weekends in 5. I always managed to get at least 2 hours sleep, but some of my colleagues had nights where they didn't get any sleep at all. And after 2 years in the hospitals, at the ripe old age of 25, I went into private practice in a working class suburb and did all sorts of things. Altogether, I delivered or helped into the world about 800 babies, did a lot of tonsillectomies and appendicectomies, a few broken bones. My father's father died of pneumonia in 1941 at the age of 66, just about a year before we could get penicillin. But when I was first in suburban practice, I still remember treating an elderly man, probably about the same age as my grandfather, who had pneumonia. And his bedroom was the front veranda with a canvas blind. But I just went in every day and gave him a shot of penicillin, and after about 5 days he was better. Times have changed. And when I was a student, I always wanted to be a specialist. When we had a term with heart specialists, I wanted to be a heart specialist. When we had a term with a thoracic surgeon, I wanted to be a thoracic surgeon. But in the end, what I wanted to do was a bit of everything. Probably because my role model was a country general practitioner who did everything. But what always interested me most were the people who suffered the most and got the worst treatment. Because some people suffered a lot more than others, and some people got a lot worse treatment than others. And in the end, I realized that the people who suffered the most and got the worst treatment were people who had mental health problems and who then didn't get proper mental health care, and they ended up getting street health care, which was always addictive. Sometimes speed, but mostly heroin. So in 1997 in my city, we were having a major epidemic of heroin addiction, and I saw young people who said they were the last person standing in their group. All the other members of their group had OD'd on heroin. So I started to work 10 hours a week in a heroin clinic. And of course I wanted to know what caused addiction. In health you always want to know what causes it, a problem. If you don't know what causes a problem, it's hard to get people better, and they often relapse. But I went to every addiction clinic in Perth and in Sydney and couldn't find a single addiction worker who knew what caused addiction. Oh, they're just dickheads chasing highs. Don't worry about it. But I did worry about it. And one day in the clinic where I was working 10 hours a week, I saw 15 heroin addicts and 5 of them had ADD, ADHD. And people were a bit inclined to say, oh yeah, addictions cause mental health illnesses. But these people had ADD since they were children, but they didn't become addicts, heroin addicts, till their teens or 20s or 30s. So I then looked very carefully at and talked very carefully to every addict about their early life, their family life, how they got on at school and at work and in their family, and found that 19 out of 20 addicts had serious mental suffering before they became addicts. And they started to take addictive street drugs to get relief when they didn't get proper medical health care, proper mental health care. About 1 in 20 didn't have a serious mental health problem. They were just keeping their partner company who had a serious mental health problem and was an addict. So what are some of the most important things about life that you need to know about so you have a good life? Well, one of the most important things that I found was that people needed to know that nearly everyone, between when they were born and they were a tiny helpless baby, totally dependent on the care of usually their mother, and as they grew and developed over the years towards becoming an adult, nearly everyone went through rough times, had nasty things happen to them from time to time, and which distressed them and caused them to be unhappy in various ways. The commonest things were various forms of anxiety or worry, general anxiety, social anxiety, panic attacks, obsessive compulsive disorder, and various phobias, and major depression and bipolar disorder, highs and lows, and attention deficit disorder, hyperactivity disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder, and very low self-esteem due to problems in childhood, and a few cases of schizophrenia, a few cases of autism, and a couple of problems that didn't seem to have names, but I thought should have names, so I gave them names. One was irritability, anger, rage and violence, which seemed to be a definite problem which I thought should have a name, so I called it IAD, irritability anger disorder. And disorder which I thought should have a name but didn't seem to have a name, which I called post-traumatic evil focus. Post-traumatic evil focus. There was people that had something very big and traumatic that happened to them that they couldn't face and couldn't cope with, so to avoid thinking about it, they thought about the CIA or Guantanamo Bay or conspiracy theories or the terrible things that they do to women or children in some country or other. So the problem was that in the 1970s, the authorities separated mental health care from addiction care, and we had mental health clinics and we had addiction clinics. And the mental health clinics which treated mental health disorders would not see addicts or alcoholics. And the addiction clinics that saw addicts and alcoholics did nothing about their mental health, didn't know anything about mental health, weren't interested, not their business. Their business is addiction, and they get people off their addictions with great difficulty. But I realized that what was needed was dual diagnosis. Dual diagnosis is diagnosing and treating mental illnesses and addictions at the same time. So that's what I did. I couldn't find anyone else anywhere who was doing that, but it worked wonderfully. And I'm glad to say that today, if you go online and search, you can find a lot of places where they do dual diagnosis. When I treated their anxiety or their depression or their bipolar or their ADD or their post-traumatic, whatever, it was much easier to get them off their drug of addiction, and there was a far lower relapse rate. While they still had the mental health disorder that originally caused or led to the addiction, it was very hard to get them off their drug of addiction, and even if you got them off it, they usually relapse. So they were usually given addictive medicine. In the big heroin epidemic, at first everyone was getting methadone. Methadone was a little bit better than heroin, but not that much better, and about 5 times as addictive as heroin. And the local clinic prided itself on the fact that its heroin addicts stayed on methadone for 5.5 years. Wow. Not a very good result as far as I was concerned. But the addiction clinic where I was working 10 hours a week wasn't interested in dual diagnosis, so I had to start my own clinic. At that time, the drug dealing epicenter of Perth was the Victoria Park railway station. So I started a clinic in Victoria Park. All the other addiction clinics were north of the river. And 17 months, and the main public clinic, 6 or 8 doctors, had a waiting list of 8 weeks. And doctors like myself, GPs, who wanted to treat addicts had to sit in at that clinic to be taught how to treat patients, addicts, in order to be authorised to prescribe methadone. And I saw that less than half the people who were given an appointment to that clinic kept their appointment. Hey, I'm having trouble here. I'm not sure if I'm recording. It doesn't seem to be.
It works. It works.
That's all right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. I'm just not sure about the technology here. Anyway, yeah, so when I sat in at this big clinic to get authorised to prescribe methadone, less than half the people who were given an appointment 8 weeks away kept their appointment. After 8 weeks, many of them were in hospital or in prison. Some of them were in a cemetery, and a lot of them were committing crime to pay for their heroin. So about 2 out of 5 kept their appointments. So when I opened my clinic, I not only did dual diagnosis,
Yeah, we need to restart it.
I
This.